Welcome to Pirate Money Radio with your host, Kevin Freeman, helping you unpack the economic headlines and providing real money solutions.
Oh, good Saturday morning. We've got some crisp air. We've got some welcome rain in parts of the country. We have an election underway in many places with early voting. And then there's football. Speaking of the election, do you know how much is at stake? America stands at a crossroads literally like never before. I remember this at the start of my career when it was Jimmy Carter versus Ronald Reagan. But in so many ways, this is even starker difference. Take the extremes of Jimmy Carter, multiply it by 5, and you get Kamala Harris. And if you put aside personality, there's a lot of Reaganism in Donald Trump. I'm joined this morning by our Pirate Money Radio co-host, Mike Carter. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Kevin. Great to be here. Yeah, just looking at that Reagan movie, watching that, it was amazing. The parallels, though, of what we were facing with communism back then, and I didn't realize how real it was compared to what we're facing today and how much more real it is today.
Yeah, no, it was done well. In fact, I've seen the movie 3 times now. We together bought out Economic War Room, and Pirate Money Radio bought out a theater with Patriot Mobile, and we showed it to some guests. And then I went and visited my daughter at college, and we said, hey, come get free pizza. And so everybody showed up. Food is an important thing. They showed up for free pizza, and then we drug them to the movie. I think we personally skewed the demographic age of that movie viewing down a little bit with the college students, but they seem to like it. They got the history.
That's exactly what needs to happen, because many in the younger generation know nothing about Reagan. They know nothing about what happened back in the 70s and 80s. And if we can bring some of those younger generation in to see that and what we were facing then and help them see what's going on today, I think that'll be a huge win.
These were really bright kids. They're friends of my daughter. But they did not know the full history of communism. They don't know why it's bad. It's not taught in schools anymore. And, you know, the movie does such a good job explaining it. Washington Post, though, wrote a blasting editorial on you know, how Reagan was a conspiracy theorist. He listened to people like W. Cleon Skousen, you know, and yet I knew Dr. Skousen.
There.
Yeah. And I pulled up here. I don't know, did you get it? I sent it to you. The current communist goals from 1963. You just walk through those goals of the Communist Party, and this is what the environment Reagan was in. And it talks about how they want to take over the United Nations. They want to take over and promote the United Nations as the answer for everything. They want to promote homosexuality. They want to discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI. Well, what I think they did instead was take it over, infiltrate and gain control of unions, infiltrate and gain control of big business. All of those things. Those really have happened.
If I were building a scorecard and checking the boxes, I mean, they've checked off about everything that's going on here, unbeknownst to most Americans. They're just trying to go out there and make a living today. And you know, we were talking at lunch even. You know, we've got our piece of the Berlin Wall back here and the set in the studio. When I was a kid, it was obvious to me the dangers of communism, because I thought, what kind of country would want to keep their people behind a wall and restrict freedom and do all these things? While it's beautiful that wall is gone now, it's almost become it's made communism more stealth, more subliminal. Oh, you know, don't worry, we'll just give you this stuff for free, but we're going to take your freedoms away from you. You don't see the wall to say, hey, there's something here that's not right.
Contrast that. The wall in Berlin was to keep people in. In America, we need to build a wall because so many people are coming across the border without permission, and we love immigration. But we're keeping, you know, so many are overwhelming the system. You see the gangs in Aurora, Colorado, and so forth. Well, Reagan beat the Soviets. I mean, it's a powerful movie. You can learn more about it at Reagan.movie. But the communists may be celebrating victory over America even yet.
It's looking more and more that way as we're letting it happen to us.
Well, great civilizations are not murdered. They take their own life. That's a historian named Arnold Toynbee who wrote decades ago. And so basically great civilizations die by suicide. We know one of the political parties in America is a strong believer in assisted suicide. And we've got Kamala Harris, raised by a Marxist. There's no question about that. And she believes that. Is she the new Dr. Kevorkian for America? So we end capitalism in America.
Well, we've got assisted suicide. We got pro-abortion, no matter what age. it's extreme if you think about it.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking assisted suicide at the national level, killing capitalism. That's another topic for another Saturday. Let's get back to the feel-good of Ronald Reagan, and I've got the rest of the story. I've shared it before with you, Mike. I know you know it, but I want to share it with our listeners. Most people are unaware that a grocery store is what finally took down the Soviet Union. That would have been great in the movie to have added that little clip.
It would have.
Back in the late 1980s, Boris Yeltsin, who was number 2 to Gorbachev, he came and visited the United States, and we were going to show him what a failure communism was. So we took him to NASA, and we're going to show him our rocket technology and all our advanced electronics and everything else. And he wasn't impressed. Soviet scientists were very good. They could produce anything. Government could pay for it. That didn't overwhelmingly impress him. But on the way out of town, he wanted to stop and get some alcohol. And so he asked to stop, and they said, well, we'll take you to our finest grocery store. He said, no, let me pick. So they let him pick, and he went to see Randall's in 1989 in Clear Lake on his way out of NASA in Houston, and he was so overwhelmed with the quality and quantity of food. He said, not even Mr. Gorbachev, not even the chairman of the Communist Party eats this well. And when you contrast it with what grocery stores look like in the 1980s in the Soviet Union, you can certainly see his point. And basically, he said at that moment, he knew capitalism wins, communism loses.
Amen. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're starting to look at going back to that kind of food situation when I hear Kamala talk about price gouging or price gauging, as she misread it on the teleprompter, I believe.
Yeah, price gauging. Well, communism failed in part because of food. The Arab Spring happened in part because of food. Food insecurity is the most common reason for a revolution or change in government. You remember the famous quote that never was, apparently. Marie Antoinette apparently never said this when confronted, the peasants have no food. She didn't say, let them eat cake. The peasants have no bread, let them eat cake. But New England Complex Systems Institute wrote a paper in 2011. I presented this in my DoD research studies about food crises and political instability in North Africa and the Middle East. And they bottom line said that food price controls in the face of high global food prices carry costs, and that is you end up with famines. Yeah. You end up with food shortages.
We can go back a little further. We looked at Reagan, that was the 70s and 80s, but I go back to my grandparents who were alive during the Depression, the Great Depression. And I remember going into their basements and seeing racks of food and beans. And Grandma, when she was a little girl, I saw a newspaper article. She won in Illinois, the canning competition out there.
She probably had a garden too.
Garden. They lived on farms. They had all that stuff ready to go, and they knew that it's just good to be prepared and have some good food there.
Well, the problem is we're going to face in America. There's this top-down control of food, and we'll talk about it throughout the program. But they want to eliminate family farms. They want to eliminate individual growing of food at home. They want to drive you into big food. And we've got the documentation. I brought all the receipts. It's absolutely proven. But it starts with Kamala Harris suggesting that grocery stores are price gouging, and therefore we need to put on price controls. Mm-hmm. Even Washington Post, this is the headline, opinion, when your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls. And it starts off, price gouging is the focus of Vice President Kamala Harris's economic agenda. Her presidential campaign says she'll crack down on excessive prices and excessive corporate profits, particularly for grocers. Now think about that. This is Washington Post quoting her official campaign economic agenda, and I guess tomorrow she'll deny she ever said it.
Yeah.
Right? So it is a bad policy. We'll talk about this, how putting price controls on is a communist policy. It's failed every time it's been tried, but it does end up with absolute control for the government. So when your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls. She's proposing price controls, so maybe she's a communist. We'll cover this and more right after this break. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com.
Welcome back to Pirate Money Radio with your host, Kevin Freeman.
Yeah, and we're talking about food on a Saturday. Food's always a good topic. Did you have a nice breakfast this morning? What you got planned for lunch? I'm thinking that, constantly, right?
I enjoy eating the food that I want to eat. And it's not always good for me, but at least I have a choice of what I want to eat.
You do have a choice. And part of the reason why it's not always good for you can be found in the reality of some of the government policies, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But we've been talking about price controls, where the government steps in and says, you can't sell that bread for more than $5 a loaf, or I guess with inflation recently, for more than $20 a loaf at some point. This is what Hugo Chavez, a known socialist communist, first enacted. When he first got elected in Venezuela, we're a very wealthy country, they were told, and they have the world's largest supply of oil. They were told, we're so prosperous. They were one of the top 20 countries in the world in prosperity. Chavez gets into power, and here it is from Wikipedia. It says, from 2003, Chavez set strict price controls on food, and these price controls caused shortages and hoarding.
Surprise, surprise.
In January 2008, Chavez ordered the military to seize 750 tons of food that sellers were illegally trying to smuggle across the border. So he wanted complete control. And you look, I've got that inflation rate in Venezuela. It just goes to the moon.
Yeah.
Have you seen those pictures with people? They have cash, Venezuelan cash, and they throw it out into the streets
it's like the
it's
Weimar
trash.
Germany thing. Yeah, it's crazy. And you don't have to go back too far to think about what happens when there's a shortage of anything. I'll go back to COVID and the toilet paper shortage, right? As soon as, I might not be able to get more, people start buying, and you can never get it again. Well, if that's your food, that's what you need to live on, that becomes a serious issue.
Funny you bring up toilet paper, because they had a severe shortage in Venezuela. And the most popular YouTube videos for a season were how to get along without toilet paper. People being funny, humorous, creative, because they just couldn't get any. Why? Because the price controls eliminated the opportunity to buy it. All right, so here is from ifreetrade.org, how price controls devastated Venezuela's economy. As a general rule, listen to this quote. As a general rule, if you find a Latin American revolutionary leader, now I'm going to take Latin American out because this is a general rule that applies beyond Latin America. As a general rule, if you find a leader aggressively controlling prices, you will discover a country speeding toward state socialist ruin. And a leading presidential candidate has just declared, Washington Post has confirmed, fact check true, her campaign confirmed it, that she wants to impose price controls if she becomes president. The last president that did that was Richard Nixon.
Yeah, and even he learned it didn't work. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. That policy is not going to work.
Yeah, but it's Nixon who you want to pattern anything after. All right, our food is at stake. Prices on groceries and eating out, just the tip of a very large iceberg. I mean, I took my family out, just got some burgers, $60. $60 for 3 people to eat cheeseburgers. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you have to think about where you're going to go and how bad you really want to go out nowadays when you start looking at how it does add up.
But then you go to the grocery store and say, how badly do you want to eat in these days? Because groceries are still expensive. Now, the prices aren't continuing to go up at the pace they were going up, but they're not going down. They're not back to where they were 4 years ago. They are still very, very high.
Right, and they're not refilling my boxes. I haven't got more ounces yet of food or product within those packages. So I'm paying a higher price for typically a little bit less food out there, and you feel the pain of it when you go out, when you go to the grocery store, any of that. And it's the hardworking Americans, those middle-class Americans, that are feeling it the worst because they're on tight budgets. They have certain amounts allocated, and now there's big differences, and their income has not kept up with that.
Yeah, well, and it's not just price controls. Price controls lead to shortages, but there is another problem, and Venezuela had it. All right, so Venezuela's got more oil than any nation, more proven reserves than any nation on the planet. Chavez comes to power. It's the oil wealth that says we're a wealthy country. But then they decide to start putting in Green New Deal type policies. And so instead of using their oil, they're going to take their corn, turn it into ethanol, and use it to reduce the amount of emissions.
Yes.
How did that work out?
More starvation, I'm afraid, and higher prices and everything else.
Yep. All right. So ethanol can have its place. Don't get me wrong, but not when it causes starvation. There's no place for ethanol if it means you're starving someone that could be eating that corn. All right. So this is a part of what we call the ESG war on farmers. And you remember the show we did with the Buckeye Institute, where we talked about the cost to farmers if ESG is implemented. That is something else the Harris administration has promised to do. Well, here's a Fox News, Fox Business article from February 7th, 2024. Costly ESG standards climate policies will ultimately reduce food and energy supplies. Plus, they'll make the prices higher. Overall, the prices of common grocery items, including American cheese, would increase 78%. Beef would increase by 70%. Rice would tick up 56%. Chicken would see a 39% increase, and eggs would be 36% more expensive. More expensive on the already higher prices if they put ESG in. What does that do to grocery bills? You got that chart there?
Yeah. This is amazing. Where you see increase in annual grocery bills due to carbon pricing, 15%. So right now they're saying an average of $9,650 a year. Currently it was $8,320. So it's going to go from $8,320 to $9,650 just in carbon taxes, I guess we could call this.
Well, yeah, carbon expenses, carbon offset. I don't know Green New Deal costs, direct costs. Your grocery bill on the average family of four is going to go up $1,330 per year just from implementing some of those standards.
And I can't believe it's going to make any change in emissions when we see what's happening around the world or anything else that's out there. It's all part of that. It's probably not written up there directly, but those 45 communist things they would do to take down America,
over the food supply.
Sure fits in one of those.
This is advanced communism, so it actually is a war tactic that goes back to Joseph and the Bible, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it says oil and gas producers, chemical companies in the American farm will likely shoulder the heaviest compliance burden, but they will inevitably share the cost with the U.S. consumers. Well, the cost to a farm, it currently costs to operate a farm $192,000 a year. The costs are going to go up 34% due to carbon pricing to $257,000 a year. That'll put a lot of local farmers out of business.
Yeah, I mean, these aren't big farms at $192,000. This is the average family farm, I'm guessing, and we look at these numbers. And now you're talking about a 34% increase. And then let's throw in, you have, in Texas, it's been dry this year. You get weather things or anything like that. This is going to put farmers out of business. I wonder if that's kind of according to a plan.
Yeah, well, we've got a whole book according to plan. And control of food supply is a World Economic Forum goal. It is the elitist goal, and we'll talk about Bill Gates and his plans, to control what we eat, how we eat, everything about that. Bill Gates wants control, and he's bought most of the farmland. If you put small farmers out of business, big farmers pick up the farmland.
Yeah, well, the good news is I'm sure they'll be looking at focusing on how to increase the nutrients and health of all this stuff.
Yeah, right. All right, so just think about this. If your current costs are $192,000, I'm just going to make a rough guess. If you're a successful farmer, you might make $100,000 a year profit, and that's what you live on, and $60,000 of that's going to be taken away. You can't afford it. Your kids can't afford it. So what are you going to do? You're going to sell the family farm. Yeah. You got to get out of the business, or you're going to go bankrupt.
Yeah. And China's probably wanting to buy that farmland, by the way. I bet they'd be willing to make an offer.
China, billionaires, BlackRock, a whole lot of people. All right, so none of this that I've mentioned so far is impacted to the same degree as the credit rating, because if you're a farmer, I guarantee you have to borrow money. It's a natural part of the farming process. You borrow money, you plant the crop, at the end of the season, you harvest the crop and you pay back the debt. That's why, in the old-timey movies and plays and stuff is, we're going to lose the family farm. If we could just hang on, it's that greedy banker who's going to take us away. Well, here's something I just saw on Bloomberg. It just came out August 30th. Pork producers face downgrades as climate risks rise, Fitch says. Beef suppliers are also seen challenged by stricter policies. What this means is that the credit rating agencies are going to look at beef and pork producers as risky because they know the World Economic Forum stands against us consuming too much meat. And so they're going to make their borrowing costs higher. They're going to get lower credit scores. The credit scores, like the social credit scores of China, are being applied here by the credit rating agencies, and the net result of it is they'll have credit downgrades triggered by climate-related risks, according to Fitch Ratings. The firms face rising costs as a result of stricter government policies to promote cuts to emissions, as well as the introduction of newer technologies and improvements to manure management and pig farms, the credit rating agency said on Friday in an emailed response to questions. What are we going to eat? If we can't eat pork, you can't. I don't eat pork. I don't like pork. But if you can't eat beef, and I do, I'm Texan through and through. Our Oklahoma background, love beef. I love me some bison too, because I've got the Native American heritage there. But what are we going to eat instead? What do they tell us?
I keep hearing that bug thing out there, and I'm still not eating bugs and being happy about it. So.
Well, good news. On March 6th of this year, NPR said this right-wing conspiracy theory about eating bugs is about as racist as you think. I don't know how it's racist.
Wow, I just became racist now?
Yeah, but you don't have a conspiracy theory. Yeah, no, we're not going to eat bugs. That's what they said in March. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Here's an update. August 28th, 2024. Public will get bug for eating insects under government-backed drive. That is the Telegraph talking about public will get the bug for eating insects. Oh, my goodness.
Scientists hope to encourage increased consumption of meat alternatives amid flight to cut emissions from agriculture. So by eating bugs, we're going to take care of this emissions problem. Are they doing this in China too?
Yeah, well, the World Economic Forum is pushing it. I imagine the people of China may be doing it, but the government leaders are definitely not. Yeah. A World Economic Forum, by 2050, there could be 10 billion human mouths to feed. Eating insects could help solve the global food supply problem. Will you be eating insects soon? That's World Economic Forum. Here again, World Economic Forum. 5 reasons why eating insects can reduce climate change. Our consumption of animal protein is a source of greenhouse gas and climate change. Insects are overlooked source of protein. Why we need to give insects the role they deserve in our food. Good grub. Why we might be eating insects soon. Mealworms are a safe source of protein, says the EU. Burgers, bugs, and the shift to a new way of eating, and more results from the World Economic Forum all about eating bugs. I'm not fond of that notion. How about you?
No, I can go back to my food days early on in Procter & Gamble. We had cake mixes and everything. The flour, the mix would get bugs in it, and then the grocer would get upset.
Disgusting.
We had to take it back. But today they could put a premium on that and say you get a little extra protein in with the cake. And, maybe that fixed that price gauging problem.
Waiter, there's a fly in my soup. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll have to charge you extra for the protein. Yeah, no, it's disgusting. The whole notion of this, they're trying to control our food supply. We're going to cover this, and we're going to cover what God's Word says about it right after this break. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal.
Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Pirate Money Radio, helping you give, spend, and invest in ways that align with liberty, security, and values. Welcome back with your host, Kevin Freeman.
Yeah, well, on Pirate Money Radio, we talk about the importance of how you handle your money. Luke 16:11 says, if you aren't faithful with how you handle money, no one will trust you with true riches. If you want to be able to eat well and prosper in a land, and those are biblical blessings, famines are biblical curses, then we've got to get the money part right. And how we give, spend, and invest make all the difference. All right, there are only three things you can do with your money. You can give it, you can spend it, or you can invest it. And at Pirate Money Radio, we work to explain solutions that support all three areas in a way that promotes liberty, security, and values. Patriot Mobile, mobile phone company, supports the Pirate Money Radio program. Patriot Mobile uses U.S. carriers, including AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, and operates on both Apple and Android phones. More information about the Economic War Room and Patriot Mobile is available at piratemoneyradio.com/AFR. That's piratemoneyradio.com/AFR. And as we're saying, Mike, food and famine were common in world history before free market capitalism. They're very biblical judgments, and they're also an economic weapon. Joseph in the Bible started something, as covered in Genesis 47. You remember that story of Joseph?
I do, yes.
And so you want to read any of that from Genesis 47?
Genesis 47. Now there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very severe. So the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan, well, I'm not going to go through all that. So when the money failed in the land of Egypt.
The money failed.
Yes.
What happens when our money fails?
Well, I hope we have pirate money as a backup.
There you go.
Little transactional gold and silver.
Yes, the money failed in the land of Egypt. Our U.S. dollar is definitely on a path to failure. The BRICS nations are going to be attacking it. Inflation is attacking it. And central bank digital currency to control us and only let us buy bugs, not meat.
Yeah,
that's in there. All right. So
I'm going to go back to when we opened the show here a little bit. The wall doesn't exist in Russia,
in Germany.
In Germany, right. But the wall exists in all these other economic tools that are being used against us. Our freedoms are being taken away. We just can't see that wall. Yeah,
the wall to keep us in, which is like the walls of a ghetto. Like Krakow or something where they wall people in. Our wall that we want to build is to actually cause immigration to go through proper, normal channels. We want to let people into this country. We just want to vet them properly and let it go through proper channels. So building a wall here in America is to keep the wrong people out. Building a wall in Germany was to keep everybody in, not let anybody out.
But all these freedoms as we lose is really it's a wall that's an invisible wall against my freedom that's slowly happening that people don't realize unless they're listening to the show on Saturdays to say, oh my gosh, this is happening. My food is being taken away. My money's being devalued. My freedoms are being taken away.
Yeah, so back to Genesis where the money failed in the land of Egypt.
Sorry,
all the Egyptians
I failed on my reading. Go ahead, finish that up for me.
All the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the money has failed. Then Joseph said, give your livestock and I will give you bread for your livestock. No more meat. I'll give you bread if the money is gone. When that year ended, they came to the next year, will not hide from my Lord that our money is gone. My Lord also has our herds of livestock. There's nothing left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate. Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So if the land became Pharaoh's, and as for the people, he moved them into the cities, from one end of the border of Egypt to the other end. This is how the people of Israel were enslaved. This is what they're doing now, mass migration, urbanization, pushing people into the cities, off the farms, and the wealthy people are buying up all the farmland, and they literally sold themselves into slavery. America is facing that right now. The devil has not forgotten how successful he was enslaving the Jewish people. Evil men and women are aware of it. Price controls, government assistance, and all this war on farms is causing the same things to come right back to us.
But at least the Pharaoh gave him real food. I mean, Bill Gates wants to give us like fake meat or something like that. So I think we got to fight this thing.
Well, not just fake meat, but ultra-processed food. Here's CNN. Look at the sources. We're talking Washington Post, CNN, NPR. That's who we're quoting here. This is CNN. Study finds growing evidence of link between ultra-processed food and cancer. Eating a greater amount of ultra-processed food was associated with a higher risk of developing cancers of the upper digestive tract, such as mouth, throat, and esophageal cancer, according to a new study. In the United States, a 2019 study estimated some 71% of the American food supply may be ultra-processed. This is what the government's giving us. But the good news is you're allowed to. The government is letting you go get unprocessed food, right? You can do that, right?
Yes, I can get all the junk food I want right now, but I don't want them telling me I can't get my 32-ounce soft drink if I want to. But I should have some wisdom to take care of my body. That's biblical as well.
Right, but the point here is they're forcing you to ultra-processed foods. Mm-hmm. If you want to go get raw milk, for example, which a lot of doctors think is very good for you. We don't give health advice on this show, but a lot of doctors think raw milk is very good for you. There's a cardiologist quoted in a Washington Examiner article. Dr. Jack Wolfson, a cardiologist, has been a customer of raw dairy products for years. He will be an expert witness. He says, we've been raw dairy consumers for many years. We've enjoyed it for, close to 20 years. And a lot of that time has been from Miller's Organic Farm. So we believe in the health benefits of raw dairy for ourselves as adults and also for our children. Here's a cardiologist, an expert, and he loves raw milk. Why is he being quoted here, though? He's being quoted because this Amish farmer named Amos Miller had his place raided by authorities. It says, raid on raw dairy farm ignites debate over freedom of food consumption. This is February 29th of this year. It's shocking, isn't it?
It is shocking.
What is the Amish farmer threat, right? He's letting people who want to get raw milk. You make the argument if you want to get a 32-ounce soda, you ought to be able to get that. What I don't like is the government forcing people to ultra-process food, and they don't even give us a healthy food choice.
And there's even technology today in the raw milk case where you can tell if that raw milk is safe to drink or not. So we don't have the problems we had in the past where people were getting sick from this. And giving people a potentially healthy alternative, but yet stepping in and doing that while we allow everything other kind of unlawfulnesses to happen across the country. Again, I'm going to go back to according to plan. There's the rules that the communists said to take down America. It's all happening right now. They're checking all the boxes.
We're watching it. We're seeing food shortages, prices going up, limits on what kind of food we're allowed to eat. What we do get to eat is ultra processed. It's not good for you. Here's Wolfson, the cardiologist, Dr. Wolfson, believes this case is a part of a bigger picture regarding a warning for the freedoms of our food supply. But what the government is trying to do in this particular case and in many others is to shut down this raw dairy so they and their corporations that they serve have total control over our food supply. Not only that, but they won't let you grow your own food. Here's Glenn Beck.
Wait a second. I can't even grow my own garden now?
No, glennbeck.com from April of this year. Glenn recently had Representative Thomas Massey on his show to sound the alarm about an important yet often overlooked issue affecting what we eat. Whether you're trying to be prepared to weather a catastrophe or just trying to keep food on the table without resorting to eating bugs, it's more important than ever to source local food. Unnoticed by most, our right to eat homegrown or locally sourced foods is under attack. The government doesn't just want a say in what you eat, they want you vulnerable and dependent on their system, and they're massively overstepping their bounds to ensure your compliance with their goals. They're raiding family gardens, like the one your grandma had, my grandma. You get the fresh green beans, you'd snap them, you get potatoes from her garden. They are coming against local farming. And it's not just happening here. It's happening in Europe. Here's AP, Associated Press, again, top quality, mainstream source, which I say that tongue in cheek. It is a well-recognized mainstream source, but they're saying things like frustrated farmers are rebelling against EU rules. The far right is stoking the flame. Frustrated farmers are rebelling because Europe seeks to address the threat of climate change, imposing more rules on farmers. He spends a day a week on bureaucracy answering the demands of the European Union and national officials who seek to decide when farmers can sow and reap and how much fertilizer or manure they can use. This is frightening. This is what we're talking about. So what's he doing there? If you take a farmer and you're going to increase their costs from rules, and then their compliance cost means one day out of it. Now, a farmer doesn't take a weekend off. Farmers may take a Sabbath off if they're Christian, but they don't take Saturday and Sunday.
If you're a dairy farmer, you never get time off because you got to milk those cows every day.
And my aunt and uncle, my dad's aunt and uncle, were dairy farmers in Pryor, Oklahoma, and they did. They had to milk the cows every day. The cows won't give you the day off. But you're having to take an entire day out of your work week just to meet federal or European regulations in this case.
Yeah, just what we need is more crony capitalism in our food supply, because I'm sure they're going to always put in the highest quality ingredients and nothing to make more margin and potentially cheapen the food or make the food last longer, even though it may not be safe for us. Those things don't happen.
Yeah, no. All right. Backing up, what we're talking about is price controls is the first step to socialism. We read that. That's absolute. It's been proven true historically over and over again. And Kamala Harris says she's going to invoke price controls, and that's validated by the Washington Post and her own campaign. Then we've got the fact that food supply and shortages are what brought down communism, but what capitalism, where it succeeded. If you don't have food, you end up in revolutions. And that was the French Revolution, was a lack of food. The Arab Spring Revolution was a lack of food. Food is an important weapon. Then we have the government saying, well, we'll let you grow food as long as it's processed our way. And so they have ultra processed. And then they say, well, wait a minute, we're not even going to let you grow your own food, and we're going to shut down small farms. Who's going to benefit from all of these changes?
Those that want to control.
That's right. Yeah. It's a communist control. It goes back to who benefited in Egypt when there was a famine? Pharaoh. Ended up taking away their meat supply, ended up taking away their land, and ended up taking away their personal liberty. They sold themselves as slaves. And it ended with, pretty catastrophically for Egypt, because God had to get his people out. He sent Moses and took the people, and all of the plagues and everything that happened. All of these things are happening with our food supply right now. And now we're watching the people who are the supposed winners show up. We're going to end up taking another break just here in half a minute. But the winners, I'm going to tell you, it's China, it's Bill Gates, it's billionaires, it's government. It is all the people that we talk about in According to Plan. It's communism. Pure and simple, taking over our food supply, limiting what you can eat, limiting what you can grow, what you can spend your money on. This is something we've got to face, and Pirate Money Radio has some solutions right after this break.
The spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Washington said paper money opens the door to every species of fraud and injustice. Jefferson said paper is poverty. Hamilton said to emit an unfunded paper as the sign of value ought not to continue a formal part of the Constitution. The founders hated paper money, so they put a pirate money clause in the Constitution for our state to use. Learn more at transactionalgold.com.
Pirate Money Radio, helping you give, spend, and invest in ways that align with liberty, security, and values. Welcome back with your host, Kevin Freeman.
Yeah, we're talking about food. we're talking about food at the source, food when it's processed, food when it hits the grocery stores, food when it hits the table. There is a push to control everything you eat, everything you can produce, what you're allowed to buy, what you're not allowed to buy. People have sold themselves into slavery over food. Nations have been toppled over food. Communism has failed because of food. And it all starts with the family farm, and we've seen the family farms disappearing here in America.
It's definitely under threat, and we saw those increased costs will just make it more so, and I'm sure there's going to be a new tax policy or something coming down the path that makes it even harder for the next generations that want to keep those farms to keep those farms.
So what happens is you create a problem, and then you create a solution, and the solution creates another problem, which you create another solution for, and in the end, you end up enslaved. And that's what communism does, and that's what we see beginning to happen here in America. It's certainly happening in Europe and around the world.
What was that famous line Reagan gave you when you met him? Wasn't there something he said about staying out of the way?
Oh, yeah. He said, I asked him, I actually congratulated him for doing so good for the economy. And he said, I didn't do anything. All I did was get government the blank out of the way and let you good people build the economy.
And that's what we need for our farmers. That's what we need for our economy. That's what we need to get back to, not all these excessive regulations and rules, but people, again, are kind of caught in this normalcy bias. They don't realize what's happening because it's kind of happening slowly, but we're seeing it tighten. It's soon going to happen all at once, right?
The frog in the kettle, and it gets eventually cooked. Well, we've been cooked. In the past 16 years, we've seen regulation increase in 13 of them, 12 of them during Obama and Biden's administrations, and one of them during the COVID pandemic that hit the tail end of the Trump administration. Overall, he reduced regulations, but COVID stopped that reduction in its tracks and then added new health regulations and so forth. And the net result of it is America has a disappearing farm and rangeland. This is Global Agricultural Productivity.org case study. U.S. agricultural land is some of the most productive and expensive in the world. More than 31 million acres of U.S. agricultural land have been irrevocably lost since 1982. An additional 175 acres of farmland and ranch land are lost every hour. That land is being lost. Part of it's from housing and expansion. Part of it is China's been buying up land. According to USDA, China owns 343,000 acres of U.S. farmland in 25 states. And
some of that's right next to our national security bases.
Military bases, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, they're doing that. And then we've got Bill Gates buying farmland. But Bill Gates wants to get involved in every aspect of your food. He wants to control your health, and he wants us all to take mRNA vaccines, and he wants vaccines for everything. He tried to eradicate malaria with mosquitoes. That didn't work, and so all of a sudden his vaccine was adopted everywhere. I mean, these were once conspiracy theories. Now they're conspiracy facts. But here's one.
Facts.
This is MIT Technology Review from 2021. Bill Gates, rich nations should shift entirely to synthetic beef. February 14, 2021. Now, is that maybe that's a questionable source we're using here, the MIT Technology Review. Maybe we shouldn't. That's a conspiracy theory, don't you think?
Yeah, a conspiracy theory that it will soon be a fact, and shifting entirely to synthetic beef is that's a tough one for me to swallow. Yeah.
Well, here's a report out of the Midwest. Spilling Bill's beans, tech billionaire spent $113 million on Nebraska farmland.
That's just Nebraska.
That's just Nebraska.
Wow.
Yes. He is now the largest owner of farmland, according to NBC News report. And that was a news report in 2021, where he's controlling McDonald's French fries, carrots, onions, all foods that he's producing.
Well, how much farmland does it take to make synthetic beef?
Well, I don't know. A billionaire couple in less...
Or does he just want to get rid of all the cows and cattle so we're forced to
build
eat
it in a lab? I don't know. Yeah. Billionaire couple in less than a decade has accumulated more than 269,000 acres of farmland across 18 states, so he's almost caught up to China, but as an individual. And then he's got one more thing, and you sent this to me, Mike, something that doesn't seem very appealing. if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about his edible coating?
Well, it's a new synthetic coating of some sort that we're not supposed to worry about, but it's supposed to increase the stability of fruits and vegetables, the lifespan out there. The question is it really healthy for you?
Well, let's be careful in saying that it is synthetic in that it is not natural to the fruits or vegetables.
All right.
Even though he claims it's probably made from some natural ingredients, it's synthetic and it's chemicals.
Yes.
You know, bottom line is water's chemicals, right? Hydrogen and oxygen.
H2O.
But it is chemicals, and it's at Bill Gates-backed edible coating now available at Kroger could make avocados last twice as long. So he wants to put this on all our fruits, all our vegetables. It really doesn't seem all that appealing to me. In fact, I'm looking for grocery stores that may not include appeal. I don't like that. For some reason, the McDonald's hamburger that sits on the shelf for 18 years and never goes bad is a bad thing, but he wants to make our fruits and vegetables like those McDonald's hamburgers so they can sit there and never. I think there's something not right about that.
Yeah, well, you look at the European Union, and some of those countries are already saying, we don't want this. Now, I'm not sure what facts those are based on or anything else, but intuitively, I'm skeptical of anything that does that. And quite honestly, if I was Kroger, I might be a little bit skeptical too. Does it really do that much to increase my market basket sales, or am I reducing my trips to the store now because my vegetables last twice as long? I want in my store as much as possible, but it's a bigger agenda than that.
Well, I want fresher food too.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't want to. If you want to save food for a longer time, go back to what your grandma did: can it.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Do your own. Put it in jars and all of that. There's just something not right in my mind about this. So billionaires and China controlling our food, shutting down family farms, environmental rules are increasing costs with price controls and shortages to follow. Ultra processing is causing a health crisis. And we've mentioned Europe a couple of times. Everybody I know that goes to Europe and eats there, they come back with two statements on food. One, I look at the label and it's very simple, not all those chemicals in it. And number two, I feel better when I eat their food. Mm-hmm. People that are gluten sensitive go there and they eat the bread there and it doesn't bother them. There's something about simpler, more back to nature. I mean, I'm usually against European regulation, but one thing they've done a pretty good job with is their food supply. Our regulations keep small farmers, local grown, out of it. Their regulations may have increased the quality, although World Economic Forum is getting in there and shutting down family farms, which is scary because they're headed where we're headed.
Yeah. And God bless them, they're fighting back as much as they can from that perspective. But yeah, in Europe, you hear often the people that go there and they don't buy, weeks worth of groceries. They go every day to the market and get the fresh food. What a great, we're not maybe set up as much for that, but the idea of fresh food is appealing to everybody. Give me something just picked out of a garden. You can taste a difference between that and something that's on the grocery store shelf somewhere.
God made it. The closer to being God-made, the healthier it is, I believe, the less processing. So we take the God-made side of this. I wish some of the political candidates would make this an issue. Oh, wait, there is one. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been talking about farms and food and less processing. I've got Spectrum Local News from Maine. Kennedy talks farms and food with campaign staff ready to launch Maine campaign. This is back in July. Independent presidential candidate. Now he's dropped out. He's supporting Trump, but he warned of the dangers of large food corporations and bemoaned the loss of family farms Tuesday in a room full of supporters and farmers in Freeport.
Well, it wasn't that an awesome thing. I heard him make that announcement, and he basically said, we're going to find out ways how to make food healthy for you again, or what's causing some of the health problems that are out there. We want to look into that and make sure that it's not something that you're eating there.
But
done right, that can be huge.
We've been told he's a nut job and he's just being political and he's all these things. And yet, during the 90-minute event, Kennedy didn't mention Democrat Joe Biden or Republican Donald Trump by name. Instead, he described his work as an environmental attorney who has sued major corporations that polluted the rivers and farmland. He also criticized the U.S. Department of Agriculture, accusing it of favoring large corporations that produce unhealthy food. They give us poison, processed, addictive foods. It's mass poisoning us, killing us, making us the sickest population in the world, and doing everything they can to destroy small farmers in this country. Now, that's a real issue for real people, and yet he's been silenced by the major media, kicked off ballots.
That should be a bipartisan issue. Unless crony capitalism kicks in, unless communism kicks in or something about control, I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, everybody should want healthy food.
You know, when he went to Trump and he said, I'm willing to support and endorse you, but here's what I want, this is at the top of his list. Promise me that you will be good and in favor of healthy food in America, pro-farmer, pro-food, pro-health. Those are some amazing things. All right, so what do you look for when you want to make an investment in food? Well, for one, maybe you avoid the ultra-processed food corporations. Maybe you find ways to invest and grow your own food. Look for a state that will allow you to do it. Look for politicians to vote for that will allow you to have food security, but also food autonomy, that don't believe in the evils of pushing bugs and things like that, but that want to allow you to eat healthy and normal. That's what I'm looking for.
And be prepared not only in your food, but one of the topics we talk about all the time here on Pirate Money is transactional gold and silver. Having an ability to pay for things that you want if for some reason we have a CBDC or something like that doesn't allow you to buy those things.
Yeah, and in fact, that is coming. You won't be able to buy or sell without the central bank digital currency unless we get pirate money legislation passed. We have 30 states looking at it. You can learn more at transactionalgold.com. This is something we're big in favor of, is personal liberty and autonomy, especially in food. All right, if you've got questions, email them to us at afr@piratemoneyradio.com and listen to our podcast at afr.net or piratemoneyradio.com or wherever you get your podcasts. This is Kevin Freeman from Pirate Money Radio. Till next week.